we went over terrain that was terrible, and they'd say, "Hurry up and get us to that place." And of course, this thing bounces and rolls and does everything else. So people were, falling all over the place. We had an officer from New Zealand who was on our track one time when we were out on a reconnaissance. And when we got to where we were going, he came up to me and he said, "I'm never going to drive with you again. I'm never going to get never get on the vehicle with you again." It was terrible. So you think we're ready? Eric, we ready? Okay. So the new release of Fighting the Bad War is in chronological order, and there's actually a table of contents. Ivan, thank you. So these are sort of in chronological order, but they're in real life they're not. So we kind of fudge things a little bit. But this story, The Tunnel, takes place in Tainan Province, November 1966. Okay, Ernie and I slumped against the charred trunk of a silk cotton tree in a wasted landscape of felled trees. The dull gray sky was a smokescreen. All around, guys were sifting dust with bayonets, kicking up dirt. "Find anything," the brass had ordered. Weapons, bodies, whatever might indicate conquest. The silk cotton, beautiful and flowering, is home to spiders, monkeys, snakes, and myriad of other creatures of the tropics. American firepower in all its awesomeness had reduced their neighborhood to ashes. Earlier in the day, we were plowing through rainforest that was, according to rumor, just this side of Cambodia. It had been rough going, even though Ernie's and my armored personnel carrier was rearmost and ran in the paved wake of the 11th Cav's other carriers and tanks that tore through the forest. Watson, our carrier commander, often looked over his shoulder, checking that Ernie and I were okay, but he looked anxious too, like a wounded animal running behind the herd. Wilson, our driver, knew his business. He kept up with the fast-moving convoy, and that kept Ernie and me wrestling with the swivel shields that supported our M60s. We fought off vines, branches, and a swarm of black pincher ants whose nest it had been just our luck to disturb. They were already infiltrating our interior down to the sandbag layer, the hope for protection against mines, which could set off our ammo canisters. Watson gave the signal that we were entering a clearing, but so did the light. Then the blast, Carrier 6-5 crippled by a mine. We quickly maneuvered into the zigzag defense. A second blast hit dead center under Carrier 6-3. Black smoke spewed fragments of metal, gear, and body parts. A final blast finished off Carrier 6-3, and then the snipers opened up. Wilson took a shoulder hit, but stayed the course behind his M50. Ernie and I covered the rear, releasing a crushing barrage that turned the air sulfuric. Cries for medics pierced the haze. Now, after all the shooting, the noise of men and machines felt eerily quiet. A transport chopper hovered over a hollow and dropped a crane to lift out a printing press as old as a Gutenberg. That press, 2 POWs and 5 bodies, accounted for our booty. Even the scarred track of seized terrain failed to seal a victory. The enemy and the forest would return. We suffered casualties. Fuzzy, that goofy southern boy, fractured his vertebrae and then died. Rodriguez, Mitch, and Dennis were history too. Matthew took forehead shrapnel but got on-the-spot attention. "No dust off for me," he argued, as the medevac chopper lifted off with Watson on board. "Think Watson could be home free?" Ernie asked. "Not if he has his way. He was lucky, Morgan, wouldn't you say? Yeah, like you can get along without a shoulder. I was next for Watson's spot, which meant another stripe. I already miss his big fat puss. But home or no, I wouldn't trade places with Wilson," Ernie replied. "Hey, how you feeling, best buddy?" "Fine, just fine." Ernie's bloodshot eyes and lopsided helmet made him look comical and tired at the same time. The round of his face bore out his Cherokee and Puerto Rican blood. We called him the Rican Cherokee. He was short, wiry, brown, and had a rosy birthmark on his right cheek. We joked that he had the best tan besides Charcoal Cliff. The rest of us were pale despite months of equatorial sun. We learned that had something to do with the malaria meds. Hey, looky there, I said. Our fearless commander, Captain Pelton, was supervising a few men in one of those futile military chores like shifting dirt. He's looking our way, Ernie said. Shit, now he's coming this way. I moved to get up. I was in no mood for Pelton's nonsense and was about to make a getaway when he waved at us. What are you guys up to? R&R, Ernie said. Not today, boys. Pelton was tall, lanky, and good-looking. You just wish he'd stop talking about how rough he had it in OCS. Wilson's fine, I hear, he said. He's going to maybe get the bronze if I had my say. Pelton had been nowhere near our carrier during the firefight. Only Ernie and I could testify about how Watson kept the ship afloat while wounded. And the purple, Ernie added. Sure enough, the purple, Pelton replied. Hey, I want your opinion, you two. We followed Pelton to a spot with a hole in the ground. I already didn't like the look of it. By God, I think it's a tunnel, Pelton said. Rotting timbers framed the small opening. And you know it's a tunnel because, Ernie challenged. Pelton showed us a couple of Polaroid snapshots, both of beehive-like mounds with air vents. He pointed up the line from the hole to the mounds. Spiker's magic with the camera, Pelton said. Spiker again, the troublemaker. I thank my stars that Spiker bunked in another tent. His cot area was surrounded with Polaroid shots of, among other things, rotted, bloating bodies. And, Pelton continued, one of the POWs, an officer we think, he's cooperating. Our PO let on about the tunnels. Pelton pulled a toothpick from his shirt pocket and stuck it in his mouth. He said, according to our translator, something like, boom, boom, all gone. Like the boom, boom girls, fuck, Ernie laughed. Yeah, but I don't like the all gone part, Pelton said. He kicked dirt and shooed it into the hole. I did not like the sound of silence. It looked like the trapdoor had blown off, but there was no sign of it. You know, all this obliteration, it's got to be a ghost town down there, Pelton said. I'd like you two to check it out. Captain, it's a given I'm claustrophobic, Ernie said. Sanchez, if you were claustrophobic, you would have long ago flipped out being on that box you guys practically live in. You get fresh air riding the track, Ernie shot back. Anyway, I'd shit my pants going in there. That's how fucking scared I am. Pelton looked my way, then back at Ernie. Your best buddy Morgan doesn't look so scared. You wouldn't let him out of your sight now, would you? If I had to go somewhere shitty bad, I would choose to go with Ernie, but I wasn't sure this was for real. This is insane, Ernie said. Swear to God, we didn't go to tunnel rat school. You two got the right build for it, Pelton said, oblivious that Ernie was dancing backwards. What if it caves in, Ernie protested. He fumbled for a smoke, but he didn't light up. These babies aren't constructed to cave in, Pelton replied, as if he dug the thing himself. I do believe we got ourselves one of those goddamn famous tunnels. Jesus almighty, Ernie explained. People die in those pits. The Major is hot for trophy. Pelton glanced around, then back at us. It's a hunch I gotta follow. Captain, I already can't breathe. The enemy breathes down there, Sanchez. I tapped Ernie's shoulder, gave him my don't worry look. It's not like I'm asking you to jump off a cliff, Pelton chided. Worse than that, Ernie said. If I was them, that fucking tunnel is exactly where I'd be hiding out. All gone, Pelton sang. Ernie spit, just missed Pelton's boot. I don't need no sass, soldier, Pelton paused. Did I hear, yes, sir? No, sir, Ernie replied. Pelton ignored Ernie and fixed me a look. Listen, take my word. It's going to be okay down there. How do you know that? Ernie demanded. I don't goddamn have to know. My job is giving orders. Pelton picked up a branch as long as a broomstick and prodded around the hole. See? See what? Ernie asked. How much alike you and the branch are? That made Pelton smile. Here you go, he said, producing a flashlight and waited to see which one of us would take it. Ernie grabbed it out of Pelton's hand and started in. Even for a small guy like him, I could see it was tight. I handed off his helmet and rifle and followed, thinking I wouldn't make it in. But after I did, Pelton passed down my gear, plus a water bottle I jammed in my pocket. Once beyond the initial opening, it was shoulder-to-shoulder walls. Low crawl time. Here's exactly why we did all that low crawl shit in boot camp, I said. How in hell are we going to breathe, Ernie said. The air shafts, dimwit. Pray to God they aren't clogged with booby traps, I thought, but didn't say that. I nudged Ernie, thinking to take the lead, but that maneuver was impossible. It was pitch black, yet I could feel the spaced rotting timber supports. We're going to fucking die down here. Stay prone, I said, and shut the fuck up. As if there's a choice, he said. Look, why don't we just wait it out and pretend we went in? 'Cause Pelton will be able to smell us all the way out here the way you're farting. Ernie fell quiet. I knew he must be scratching his ass. It was an obsession. I keep telling you, Ernie, you gotta keep your wits. We were eating VC dirt and sweating like pigs. My face was taking a shower. What the hell made me so agreeable about going in? Insubordination was a poor second option. You son of a bitch, Pelton, I mumbled. Now you say it, Ernie said. I couldn't see his foot when it connected with my head. That didn't hurt, but I was pissed, ready to make him suffer. I practically crawled right up on him. The space got wider and higher. That's where I did a miracle contortion to get in front of Ernie. After that, I stopped, my back to the damp wall. Ernie hunched beside me. Was that my chest going thump-thump? The flashlight slipped from my sweaty hand. I couldn't feel my trigger finger. I can't do this, Morgan, Ernie whispered. His breath was sour and he was shivering. You got the chills in this oven? I said in his ear. This is where shit comes out of the woodwork, Ernie whispered. Shit, all right. My eyes were stinging. I closed them to ward off being dizzy and the sensation that the place was closing in on us. I scraped my hand against the damp, very solid wall. Dared not speak my mind. We wouldn't see anything coming at us until we were in their faces. We could have crawled out by then, we had rested so long, but I got prone to go forward, rifle in my grip, flashlight where it belonged in my other hand. You are one strange motherfucker, Morgan, Ernie grumbled. Canaries in the mine shaft, he added. Come on, buddy. I turned on the flashlight and aimed at what looked like the end of the passage. A few recesses, maybe for supplies, broke the conformity. The recesses were supported by timber frames and were empty. The tunnel got wider, curved, and gradually distended, appearing to converge with another passage. We were moving on our knees now. My imagination started getting the better of me. I thought we'd stumble into living quarters, the likes of which I'd seen in sketches. Big spaces with cots and supplies, and who knew what else. Then shock, face to face with the VC. You got any crumbs? I asked Ernie. Huh? Tell me you don't know the story. The only story I know is I'm sweating like a pig. Shh. What? Ernie wanted to know. You hear that? My tone was obviously teasing. Prick. There's nobody here, Ern. They all got the hell out as fast as they could. I beamed the flashlight again, bouncing light against the walls overhead and down the passage. No crawly creatures in sight. And they took everything, didn't they, Ernie said. Didn't they? Didn't they, goddammit? When you ain't got a bullet to waste, I said, I won't be crying a river. Up to that time, Ernie tagged so close behind me, I could feel his rush breathing in competition with my own. We were losing too much water. I touched my fever-hot face. I got out the water bottle and handed it to Ernie. Let's make this a quick round trip, Ernie said. He drank too much of the water. I chugged, spit some into my hands, and wiped my face. Pretty soon, I said. I reached out, but Ernie wasn't there. I rose up too suddenly and bagged my helmet. Very smart, Maria, very smart. Ernie was sitting hunched a few yards behind. He crawled my way. Just a little further, I said, but I was pushing our luck. Ernie got quiet, his usual defense. Just as well, we should have never been talking. Images of sneaky crawling VC flashed before me. I worried about Watson and wondered whether I should have replaced him in the turret after he got hit. But I'd been entirely consumed, nearly mindless, with shooting, reloading, and reloading until the barrel of my .50 turned red. I'm going to start back, honest to God, Morgan. Ernie admired what he considered my bravado, which was nothing of the sort. It was just the kid in me who had, finish what you start, drummed in my head by my father. Anyway, why fight Ernie when it was Pelton we should have defied? What the hell was that? Ernie gasped. He started slapping at himself. You idiot, what the hell do you think? Fucking alien creatures, he whispered. Bugs, I said. I beamed the flashlight overhead along the walls. Some fellows grew muscles digging this tomb. Why are we just feeling bugs now? Ernie persisted. Because they're sneaky, just like whoever used to live here. I hate the sneaky part. Silence is an art, I said. I beamed the light overhead. I scanned the walls. Tropical roaches the size of Arizona scurried every which way. Jesus H. Christ, Ernie said. I thought you loved nature. Gives me the fucking creeps. Just follow me, okay? And let's shut up. The descending passage got a little wider and higher. Better wiggle room. Hey, he whispered. Hey, what? Where the fuck we going? Crazy. You want to come? My mother used to say that when I wondered where she was going. One of my aunts suggested I was maybe very scared of mother abandonment. I sat hunched with my back to the wall. The wall was damp, almost muddy. I was drenched beyond any more caring. Ernie huddled against me. I had a thing for Ernie. I liked his smell. I liked him warm against me. He was a cunt hound, but with an oversexed quality that had no boundaries. So I let myself relax with him. No expectations, just comfort. Besides, I made it with the girls too when we visited Hamlet's, and all that horniness had to go somewhere. Ernie put an arm around me and put his face up close. Even in the dark, I could see his birthmark. I wanted to kiss it. Then he spoiled it all and belched. Sea rations, he said, and grunted. Let's get out of here, Morgan. Okay, Kimosabe, but I kept crawling forward, despite cramping muscles and a burning throat. I could have avoided all this had I checked the box that sent me to the shrink. I watched a fellow going in the draft board shrink's office. The recruiting sergeant told me he was no cooler than a $3 bill, and for sure he was no red-blooded American. Was I a red-blooded duty-bound patriot? I liked the adventure part more, but that was wearing thin. I couldn't make sense about the mess we were in. It was like good soldier, good war, bad war. You're going to get a lot of mileage out of today, aren't you, Ern? I felt his breath, followed by the jab of his rifle. What the hell, man? I said way too loud. Enough, I thought, enough. I put down my M16 and the flashlight, took off my helmet, and wiped my head. It was too dark to see what Ernie was doing. We sat on our asses. I shook my weary arms and stretched my legs. Then I pressed my hands into both sides of the tunnel, solid, damp, maybe fertile, and musty, oppressively musty, like the dirt basement back home. Hey, bus buddy, Ernie said in my ear. We are sweating on each other. I hoped he was getting off on that. Bastard read my mind. He put his hand over his mouth to muffle his laugh. Ernie had fits of uncontrollable laughter in all the wrong places. Night patrols, church services, in the latrine when the stench of collective shitters equaled the foulness of the shit vats in kerosene blaze. He lit a cigarette and blew smoke at me. You know, Pelton's up there wondering. And you with smoke signals. He put the cigarette out. Come on, let's get out of here, Morgan. He must have smiled when I said okay, but then a jokey sound startled us. It was like someone was clearing his throat. Holy fucking shit. I retrieved my gear and sidled forward, hugging the wall. I thought I tore my sleeve, wondered about blood. I touched where the tear was, tasted my hand. No blood. I waited for Ernie to catch up. I knew he was pissed, but Pelton was right. Ernie would never desert me. Somebody's choking, Ernie said. As we crawled toward the mystery noise, I mulled over the difference between a surprise ambush and this right now suffocating slow motion. I sighed, or did someone else? When the choky sound recurred, we stopped dead. Were we getting nearer the source or moving away from it? I turned on the flashlight, saw nothing, and quickly turned it off. Heavy breathing burned my throat. How much dirt can you inhale? Delusion, Ernie said. Quiet. I laid my rifle down and wiped my hands on my pant leg, then gripped the flashlight, turned it on, and scanned as far ahead as possible. You see that, Ern? What? I don't know. Something. My shaky hand made for an unsteady beam, but I finally targeted a recess. We must have seen the foot at the same time. Oh my God, said Ernie. Cover me, Ern. The flashlight beam bounced like a searchlight and again rested on the foot. I turned around as if I could see Ernie, the best of sharpshooters. You ready? I should be racing my hot butt out of here, you know, don't you, he said. That meant he wouldn't. I scraped up a handful of dirt, fisted it, and tossed it at the foot. Nothing. I could smell Ernie practically up my ass. That choky sound again emanated from the recess. We froze, waited, and again moved ahead. At closer range, we saw the leg that owned the foot, and then the other leg, too, twisted sideways. I aimed the flashlight at the body. The fellow was leaning crookedly, head slumped against the wall. He wore loose black pants and a black shirt torn up into his chest. Short hair stuck out unevenly around a headband. I shined the flashlight in his face. Long lash eyelids accentuated a passive face as if he died or he was dying peacefully. He was just a boy. I shook him. I shook the enemy. He's not cold, I said. Nor booby-trapped, thank God, Ernie said. But he ain't breathing. We were side by side, practically on top of the guy. I raised the left eyelid. You'd think he was sleeping, I said. You figure he's dead? Don't ask me. We did a quick reconnaissance. I wanted to yell, anybody there? Look at his face, Ern. He can't be alive. Then what in the hell were those noises? I wanted to know. Wounds don't breathe. Ernie moved to touch the wound but didn't. This makes one more body count to throw the boys upstairs, he said. Check out that wound, Ern. It was the size of a bottle cap, probably from an M16. Dry blood had crusted and bubbled around it. Otherwise, the body was remarkably clean. What if he's not dead? You nuts? Ernie again stopped short of touching the wound. I knew that the bullet would have ripped a bigger hole where it came out. When I reached forward to turn the body, Ernie stopped me. What? Why anything? Ernie put two fingers under the boy's chin. I'm shaking too much if there's any life. Test the wrist. Ernie did, but I couldn't make out his verdict. Well, we could drag him out, I said. Are you out of your ever fucking loving mind? What if we're not sure, I asked. About? Whether or not he's dead. Because if we leave him here, it's no more than right we have to be sure. What? You want to kill him again? I want to be sure. Silence. He's small, Ern. I ain't dragging him out of here, he said. They all must have got out so fast they couldn't take him. This was oddly reassuring, coming from Ernie. I wonder what lay ahead. More bodies for the count? I say we play God and pronounce him dead, Ern. My people, my mother's people, used to let the dying go off and die with dignity. So, Ernie peered at the man's face. I don't think he's alive. You're just saying that. Otherwise, we get a medic down here, I offered. You mean go out and come back in? One of us would. I can't believe you just said that, Morgan. Then tell me he's dead. Silence again. Tell me that, Ernie. He's dead. Ernie swiped his mouth against his sleeve. Christ, I'm taking a bath. He shifted, obliging me to move. We practically fell into the maybe dead man. Don't you wonder whose bullet that was? Ernie poked at the man, put an ear near his mouth. Well, don't by chance have a mirror, Ernie asked. A mirror he wants. Check his pulse again, why don't you? Ernie tested the man's wrist again and let out a nervous laugh. Deader than a doornail. You sure? Here then, Ernie said, and took out his pocket knife. We have an obligation here, Ern. Technically, he's POW. Take the fucking knife, Morgan. I propped my M16 against the wall, handed Ernie the flashlight, and took the knife, examined it closely, ran my fingers along the blade, sized it up. Pretty big blade for a little knife. Yeah, multi-purpose, Ernie replied. And it's sharp. It's a wonder you don't cut yourself. I closed the blade when I put it in my pocket, you damn fool. He shined the light right in my face, practically blinding me. Remember, best buddy, he said, how we say that if this was you or me, I hate when you do that. Something went topsy-turvy in my head, something that challenged my entire being. I shivered, imagined shivering in that oven. Next moment, I felt rigid and frozen. The lit flashlight was our dead giveaway. I pointed it back from where we'd crawled and caught a rat scurrying along the wall. You're right. We have to trust each other, I told Ernie. sickened by the idea of more rats. We have to be able to say, if this shit happens to you or me, God damn it, Ern, are the walls closing in? Shut the fuck up and give me the knife back. No. No, why? Because now it's me and him. I didn't say it. It would have sounded absurd, but it was about the dignity of life. I tightened my grip on the knife. Would there ever again be this time to decide between life and death? A tingling coursed through me, then numbness. It'd be a crime, wouldn't it, if we just left him? I was stalling. He hasn't shit. My God, you're going to get medical on me, Ernie said. Besides, you know how little they eat. How would I know? Give me the knife, Morgan. I shook my head, deeply inhaled, and plunged the blade into the boy's chest. Whatever I'd eaten gagged its way up my throat. Take a deep breath, Ernie said. I did, and gagged some more. And then I felt the aura of tenderness from Ernie. He put his hand over mine, on the knife handle, and slowly helped me withdraw the blade. You're okay, Morgan. You're really going to be okay. He released his grip and shined the flashlight on the bloody blade, wiped it on the man's pants, and folded the knife in place. Blood oozed from the wound, dribbled down, and started to soak the waistband. Ernie, do the dead bleed? During months in Vietnam, I'd fired countless rounds from my M60, thrown grenades down holes and over berms. On patrols, I set off claymore mines at the hint of the rustle in the dead of the night. But never had I seen another man go down by my hand. No tags scored your hit among the prize corpse we lugged out to tally. I tried to keep pace behind a fast-crawling Ernie. He was making quick distance from the recess that would be the dead man's grave, unless his comrades returned for him. They rarely left their dead behind. They barely left the imprints of their existence. Ernie stopped and turned around. Hey, you like this place, for Christ's sakes? I hustled to close the gap. We thought maybe you were having a goddamn picnic, Pelton said when we hoisted ourselves up to daylight. What do you say? When neither of us replied, Lerny looked skyward as if praying for deliverance. By now, a few men had begun to congregate, Spike among them, Polaroid in hand. You guys see anything down there? Spike asked. Nothing, Ernie said. How come he always does the talking? Pelton asked me. He likes to talk, I said. These guys look like shit, Spike interjected and snapped our pictures. I don't care which one of you does, Pelton said. I want a full report. Now everybody get the hell out of the way. Pelton signaled for a flamethrower-equipped carrier. He directed the vehicle at the hole, guided the sighting, and backed off. Let it rip, he shouted. So these two characters you will see, actually you'll see Morgan in the last story, but you'll see Ernie and Morgan and other characters in all the other stories that are recurring. And I'm tempted to leave a couple things out that are more descriptive than they need to be for a one reading, but you get to know who they are and different iterations as you move through the stories. I guess it'd probably be a good idea just to wait, and then we can take some questions and eat. Okay, this is the last story. It takes place in Sugar Land, Texas, February 1986. Don't ask me why Sugar Land, but Bob said to me it was in San Francisco. He said, we can't have another San Francisco story. You got to take it someplace else. So I said, okay, I'll figure something out. Am I losing this guy here? Nah, that's better. Okay, this is called When You Coming Home. A rare morning fog and chilled off the Gulf was spoiling Morgan's day off. The fog settled low with the cool wind, wetting the weighty duffel bag he shouldered and the carton of detergent underarm. He went early to the laundromat to beat the crowds, mumbling the whole way past the parking lot, the auto shop, holding his breath against the smell of paint fumes he used to love as a kid. The laundromat occupied the ground floor of a box-like 1930s apartment building with some storefront windows. As soon as Morgan opened the door, another smell hit him. "Mornin'," a raspy voice said. A man in worn-out hospital blues was leaning in a chair tilted against one of the long folding shelves. He turned the corners of his mouth to something that could have been a smile. His teeth needed help. Jesus, did he kill somebody for that outfit? Morgan paused, looked at the door, and hesitated. Should he scrap the plan till the guy was gone? His lover Kevin would be pissed. They were down to their last socks and underwear. He glanced over at the man. I said mornin', the man practically yelled this time. Is it now? Morgan replied. Last thing he needed was a conversation with a stink bomb. You got issues with me? The man got up. Aggression, Morgan thought. Sorry, buddy. Intimidation won't work on my turf. He just about flung his duffel bag on the nearby table. When he glanced at the man again, he noticed a cardboard sign upright on the shelf. Feed a vet. He saw guys with that sign and others like it all over Houston. They were a rare sight in suburban Sugarland. Who the hell knew the fakes? Morgan went over to the change machine and fed in a 10, listened as the coins fell in the cup. When he and Kevin went to Houston, he kept singles for panhandlers. 1 per limit. Kevin thought him a sucker. Kevin was a good man, generous and family involved. Like for a lot of people, the homeless situation was society's bad report card. Someone else should fix that. Morgan kicked open the door. Jesus fucking Christ, ain't it cold enough? Morgan ignored him. He began separating the darks from the whites and light colors, stuffed 2 machines, added detergent, put in the coins, and pushed. He remembered when his mother did laundry. Detergent, steam filled the room. No such luck here. Very impressive, the man said. He rocked back and forth in his chair. On the wall behind him hung a corkboard of tacked-on hand-scrawled notices and solicitations for massage, meditation, and miracle remedies. A lot of loot for laundry these days, the man was smoking. Some people like clean clothes. Morgan straight-on faced the guy. Oh, and that feed a vet sign for real? Morgan asked. You questioning my veracity? That's right, pal, I'm questioning your veracity. Nam, 1968, like it was just yesterday. Morgan hesitated. He was Nam, 1967. Also on the shelf near the man were a faded green satchel, the packet remains of small powdered donuts, newspapers, and ashtray. The Feed a Vet sign stood out. Nam where? On K, 1st Air Cav. Don't suppose you got a clue. I got a clue, 11th Armored Cav. Well, fuck me. The fellow jumped up and danced a reel, hands over his head, like he'd won the lottery. Yeah, fuck us both, Morgan said, but that wasn't yesterday, my man. My man? The fellow crossed his legs. They call me Libby. Morgan looked at his watch, which also showed the date, Tuesday, February 18th, 1986. What's your name, anyway? Morgan. So, Morgan, don't you think it's amazing that nobody ever went to Nam, except those guys in pickups with stickers telling the whole world who they are? You ever get the weird feeling, asking why we're back on the block instead of 6 feet under? Yeah, instead of 6 feet under. Libby paused. You were getting ready to turn around and leave after you walked in, weren't you? Yeah, between you and the smoking, too? How in the hell can you afford cigarettes? The stench of tobacco got worse the further Morgan was from quitting. You mean monetarily? Yeah, monetarily. Morgan opened the door wider and took a deep breath. Didn't I kind of say nice that it was cold in here? Stinks in here. Say what? The man shifted as if to rise again, then changed his mind. I do without other luxuries for my smokes. That's pretty obvious. Stop encouraging, Morgan thought. Well, fuck you, man. When Morgan didn't react, Libby went on. I came in right after that fat Korean opened up. He's Chinese. And I can't believe he didn't kick you out. He wasn't very hospitable, and he was in a big hurry. You know them Koreans, diligent to perfection. Morgan bit his tongue. And I'm betting he's Korean, finished Libby. I'll goddamn guarantee he's Chinese. You can't tell a Korean from a, oh shit, it don't matter. I got a pretty good idea, Morgan said, but he didn't volunteer why. I happen to know the slant-eyed race. Libby stood up and then sat down. You fucking kidding me, slant-eyed? Morgan couldn't resist, and then he went further. If you're so good with races, why don't you get a job at the UN, the other side of the country, if you get my meaning? You ever ask him what he is? He's Chinese, Morgan said. How long you been coming here? None of your business. Again. Am I making you mad? 'Cause you look mad. Libby coughed up phlegm, got up and spat in a perfect arc into the trash can. In that second from his mouth to the trash can, Morgan espied the thick, greenish brown. You aren't going to puke, are you? I don't puke, but I shit like the best of them. Too much information, Libby. Libby reached in his pocket, figured an object, and grinned his bad tooth smile. Getting used to the smell? Well, you damn well. No, I smelled worse, Morgan said, and don't try anything funny. Funny like ha-ha funny? You know what I'm saying. Damn sure do. Libby tapped his pocket. I carry a knife. And you have to. He stood up again, but not going anywhere. Brushed down the blue pants like they had a crease. Then he smelled his hands. Bet them clothes you jammed in there and those machines ain't never got to the smelly stage. Americans are so fucking pathologically clean, it makes me crazy. Well, Libby was right about that. Kevin tossed clean socks and underwear into the hamper all the time. He constantly washed his hands, and in summer he showered and changed clothes twice a day. Morgan chuckled, then wondered if the guy noticed. He checked the machine to see that it was all normal. The owner was anything but diligent about his equipment. But it would have been right kind of you if you let me sniff your wife's panties before you put them in the machine. Oh, my fucking God. You can't know how off the wall that is, Morgan said. That didn't penetrate. I mean fucking really. So why ain't you working? You know what's wrong with people like you? I get it. Wifey works, hubby does the work. You know what's wrong with people like you, Morgan? Morgan retorted. You figure the world owes you a living, and you go around doing nothing and peddling sympathy and stinking to high heaven. Libby pulled out and buffed his pocket knife on his pant leg. You know that doesn't scare me, Mr. Stinko. Just don't want it falling out of the hole in my pocket. Got holes in my pants, holes in my shoes. What's a bum anyways? Bums used to be noble, Morgan said. He could predict Kevin's reaction. And you actually had a conversation with the guy? Hobos used to be noble, Libby belatedly corrected. They lived with some dignity, Morgan added. Don't go glamorizing hobodom. I'll try remembering that. Morgan browsed through a stack of freebie papers, rejected them all. The man offered him the sports section of the Fort Bend Herald. Go on, it don't smell. The outstretched hand seemed like a peace gesture. Yeah, thanks. Morgan sat on a running machine, holding the sports section. He knew the local scene. Football was religion. I coached track, Dulles High. If you know it, why the fuck would I? Even after a long-distance run, those kids never smell as bad as you. Shit. You really do need a shower. Tell me something I don't know. And wouldn't you mind closing the door? Yes, I would mind. A long, narrow table separated the dryers from the washers. Libby went to the dryer side, kicked shut the door, and then turned. Guys like you. Libby sneered. What about guys like me? Morgan shifted and adjusted his balls. Guys like you don't know. Libby coughed up phlegm again, but swallowed it this time, which just about made Morgan choke. See, here's how I figure it. Good-looking guy like you, even still got your hair. Libby rubbed his balding scalp. But you got some gray. You got to know that at least. Looks like you belong to one of those hotsy-tots gyms all over Kingdom Come. But I still don't get what it is you don't know about guys like me, Libby. Forget it. Libby went back to his chair. You figure I need a shower, huh? You can get a free breakfast and lunch in this town, all those goody two-shoes. But I ain't seen no free showers. He was right. Libby would have to trek to Houston for better services. You seen any public showers around here? Just tell me where. Morgan had nothing to offer on this score. So when you going to hit me for a handout? I wouldn't take your filthy money. Libby got up, walked around the chair, and sat down again. I like to. He made a fist. Any time, Morgan said. He was getting used to the smell. Libby spat in the trash again. Same ugly sight. Where are you from, anyway, Libby? Everywhere and anywhere. What about you? You don't talk Southern. I'm from the Bay Area, San Francisco. Notorious Queersville. We say gay. Pardon me, all to hell. I mean, really. So why in hell you here? Getting my feet wet. Got a 2-year teaching contract. I sort of wandered around the country before I went back to school. Late bloomer. Why aren't you in school now? District holiday. And so much for peace and quiet and writing lesson plans. So just where is everywhere and anywhere? Mostly east. That's pretty wide open. Actually, I mean Asia. That's how I feel. And I'm from Timbuktu. You know, Libby said, all nice now, I don't run into guys bending on. Not even on the streets. I avoid 'em like the plague. All those cock and bull stories. He paused. And you think, I stink? Morgan checked his watch. It's 1986, he announced. So you've been back how many years and still messed up in the head? The washers were on rinse. So who knows you've been to Nam? Libby asked. Where'd that come from? Morgan asked. He hesitated. My family, of course. Your students know? Maybe from hearsay. Who else? My lover, Morgan said, was surprised that came out of his mouth. And what does she think? He. Libby didn't skip a beat. He know what you did over there? I stick to the easy stuff. Morgan felt stupid for saying that. Easy fucking what? I mean that how do you keep them from thinking you need a psychiatrist? I don't need a psychiatrist. You and your honey bunch doing the foster kid thing? He didn't wait. Too many people in the world, don't you think? Libby spat but missed the trash can. He got up, rotated his heel over the bubbly splat. I was on a personnel carrier, Morgan offered. Oh, yeah, I've seen plenty of them. Sitting ducks, you ask me. What about you? Door gunner, Libby said. Job with the worst odds. Wow, they called it the 5-minute career. Libby turned in his seat and crossed his legs. Hell, man, I was fucking good at my job, and that made me an ace motherfucking killer. Did we really belong in Nam? Morgan asked. What's your opinion about that? Was a fellow in my unit thought we were all heroes, just being there. You didn't answer my question. It wasn't like you could lay down your weapon and plead sanity and peace. There were real bullets, mortars, booby traps. So kill or be killed, right? Libby went to Morgan's side of the room, laid his hands on a spinning washer. You do any heroic stuff? Morgan didn't have anything to say on that. When was the last time Vietnam came up in conversation? All this Nam thinking was solitary, sometimes in the middle of the night. He'd get out of bed, hit the bathroom, sit on the toilet until Kevin called, asking if he'd fallen in. What was he thinking sitting there? He thought of all the wasted lives. He thought about how survival required hate, sometimes for the whole goddamn race. He thought about torching Hooshes, trashing Hamlets, and his ever-ready best friend, the M50. And he thought about Ernie, sweet Ernie, all bloodied outside the burning tent after a mortar attack. Later, his buddy Wilson told him he'd made quite a scene over Ernie's dead body. Heroic stuff, Morgan absent-mindedly replied. No hero stuff. Well then, Libby began and then posed, what about the blame? Blame? Nobody's to blame. What about, say, the big guys who make the decisions from a million miles away? When Libby spat again, Morgan thought he saw blood. You been checked for TB? You ain't gonna catch nothing from me. I take care of number one. Always have. Didn't we all? Don't look like from all the casualties out Houston way, Libby said. Not everybody who says he was there was. Sometimes Morgan looked at the Libbies of the streets with curious disdain. Libby looked like all of them. But they're dying on the street, you know. You lose a lot of buddies? Libby asked. Some, Morgan paused. Too many. I had a best buddy. I'll bet you did. He waited for Morgan's rebuff. You still in touch with this best buddy? He didn't come back. Oh, sorry, I guess. Libby didn't know what to say next. We were the envy, you know, he went on. We did a lot of shuttling GIs all over the countryside in between terrorizing the sky. Shit, I hardly got a chance to set my feet on the ground. Can't say how many times I slept while flying, but I'll tell you, I wasted a lot of gooks. Jesus, man. You and your buddies call him something different? It's goddamn over, Libby. It ain't never gonna be fucking over. Libby lit up and took a drag. Fucking never. Libby tapped his head. You ever smoke? Like a chimney, Morgan replied. Lover make you quit? Common sense. Libby grunted. What's your man like? Libby said. His name is Kevin, and he's Chinese. That's all he offered. He reminisced the night Kevin lured him onto the dance floor. Straight and shiny black hair. Under the rotating strobe light, his forehead was glittering sweat. His underarms were soaked. He danced like a professional, like an acrobat. And then, goddamn, can you believe, Roberta's Flack, the first time ever I saw your face came on, and they were like one on the dance floor. He's a teacher, too. Chinese immersion in Houston. So he's what, a real teacher? We're both teachers. Why don't you go back to Frisco? Might, if I can tear Kevin away from his big family. Chinese, damn. Don't you think China's getting too big for its britches? I mean, do you think about Kevin's loyalties? Oh my God, that is so fucking pathetic. I had a Chinese lady once, believed everything I heard about how they lived for their man, shy, submissive, and all that. She let me drink her good booze and then waited for my drunken babble. Eventually, she kicked my ass out. Here I am. When the washer stopped, Morgan unloaded the wash into the dryers and dropped in the quarters. Bet you end up all folding all those clothes too, don't you? Libby said. He got up and hovered over the trash can, squeezed his left nostril with his thumb, and blew a wad out of his right nostril into the bin. Gonna have to sanitize that bin, Morgan said. You gonna squeal on me to that Korean? Give it up, will you? What's that shit-eating grin? Libby wanted to know. Had a sergeant major, we called him Jimbo. He had that blow-your-nose thing down to a science. Got to be normal. Normal? Nothing ever really got normal. Or the new normal made us all fucking animals. Morgan sighed. He had never considered himself an animal. Sure, he fired relentless barrages that wasted life, and without ever seeing who fell. Jesus, man, you must have littered the ground from your chopper. My M60 ran nonstop. You guys in armor use 60s, right? And 50s and grenade launchers. We were a regular weapons factory. But sometimes when we dismounted from our vehicles, it was just you and your M16, that powerful, lightweight, rapid-fire killing machine. Morgan would never forget low crawling in the tunnel with Ernie, sweaty M16 slipping out of his hand. They came across a left-behind Vietnamese boy with a bullet hole in his chest. Was he dead? He and Ernie wavered what to do. They finally played God and put a knife in his chest, a merciful death, he thought at the time, but he was never really sure. I got a niece born with one lung, Morgan said, out of nowhere. Libby was alert. Her father, my brother-in-law, was Marines. They figure Agent Orange. Want to know what the doctor told my sister and brother-in-law a few months after the kid was born? Don't get your hopes up. Same for all the kids back in Nam, Libby said, and what the fuck did we care? Now you're on their side, thank the heavens. Libby grimaced. He pulled out a toothpick, who knew how unclean, and started methodically digging into his gums. Dentist told me I got deep pockets. So you got a dentist? Ages ago. Why don't you find yourself another woman? Have a nest of kids. Yeah, the mama of my dreams is right out there in Sugarland, no less. Libby spat in the trash can, wiped his mouth on his sleeve. The toothpick was still dangling from the side of his mouth. A walking sick factory, Morgan thought. He opened the door. He was suffocating from the heat and smell. A tear formed at the corner of his left eye, the one that took shrapnel. He turned in the doorway. My niece, she doesn't know what having one lung really means for her future, for the children she might have, if she can. He had to pause. Fucking Agent Orange and all the rest of the shit we laid on the land. I know. Libby lit another cigarette off the burning one. Shit's gonna kill you, man. Kill me. Ever wonder why we're alive and they aren't? I should be riddled with guilt. AIDS. So you're not dying like so many of them. Libby sounded relieved. Do I look like I'm dying, Morgan? Moved closer to Libby, looked him in the eye. Beautiful blue eyes. Must have been a knockout. Go on, I probably look more like I'm dying than you. No, I see a healthy being somewhere in there. God almighty, you're not hitting on me, are you? No, Libby, I'm not. I got my man. I got my man. You know how that sounds? Sounds pretty fucking good to me, just being able to say it. Well, let me ask you this, now that you have your man. You think some woman, if I got all cleaned up, you think some woman might find me attractive? He took a long, hard drag, scrutinized Morgan's regard. I ain't saying I'm looking or anything, but you think maybe? I bet you'd look damn right cool, but you gotta quit smokes. Nobody likes that anymore. Libby snuffed out a cigarette and spat again, this time hitting the trash can rim. And that's not real pretty, Morgan said. What are you, my mother? Libby feigned kicking the trash can. You know, you must have been grungy over there. You don't look at me like, we're all stinking to high sky. That's something most of us got over, Libby. I don't need to get over it, Libby said. And I sure as shit ain't the only one who ain't come all the way back. And your brothers on the street, Morgan said. Our brothers, Libby said. You were ready to cry back there, weren't you? That eye. You're a funny guy. Were you like that before, Nam? Does that matter? He was entirely at ease, almost as if he and Libby were lifelong friends. Bet your ass it matters. My lady friend, she says to me, Libby, were you always like that? And I was a pretty quiet kid, good student too, and patriotic about what I don't know. But when the fucking draft notice came, well, country love wasn't on my mind. I wanted a change of scene, foreign lands, and foreign pussy. Libby hesitated. I ain't asking for compliments 'cause I served, and I ain't looking for pity, no way. None of that coming my way. Good, that settles that. He sat back down, crossed his legs, smiled. That settles what? Morgan put his hand on the warm window of the dryer. It settles that as soon as you or I walk out that door, we don't exist for each other anymore. That's bullshit, Morgan said. You getting attached? It's just that we know shit. And that makes us what? Blood brothers? Libby got up and moved toward Morgan, but stopped short a few feet. You can't give a shit for somebody just passing through. I'm passing through, and we're both passing right through each other. And if that don't make sense, then you're one dense cocksucker. Bad choice of words, Morgan said. Libby laughed and coughed. Oops, sorry, he meant it. You know what, Libby? You remind me of a buddy of mine. We used to call him Bad Mouth Henry. But you want to know something? I'll always remember Henry, all broken up over the cellar fellow blown up by a mortar. Funny thing is, it was a guy he used to berate no end. Ain't that human nature, man? Some things have to be worth it. Some things have to be civil. Where did that come from, Morgan wondered. Libby practically choked, blowing out smoke. You disagree, Libby? What if I do? Swear to God, guys like you. You already said that. When the dryers finished, Morgan unloaded the clothes and began the folding Libby had predicted. What do you say to a truce? You got a guilty conscience? What's guilt got to do with it? Oh, I do like that, Libby said. Yes, I do. You think I'm going to feel guilty about how the world's fucked you over? Morgan stopped folding. You're the world and I'm the world, Libby's saying. How very profound. Go on, admit it. You like the sound of it. Libby stood up. It sure ain't what you figured I'd say. Now go on, crack a fucking smile, why don't you? Hang on there. Listen, buddy, I'll make you a deal. You come on over to my place, use the shower. Hang on there, Libby interjected, and I'll fix us some lunch, Morgan finished. I don't want no fucking weird business. Libby sat down, crossed his legs again, and lit another cigarette. And you don't have anything you got to do right now, do you, Libby? Just do your folding, why don't you, Libby said, without a trace of sarcasm. Morgan folded. After finishing stuffing the bag, he hoisted it on his shoulder and reached for the detergent. Before he could get it, Libby picked up the box and headed out the door with it. So those are the bookends. Yeah. Gee, I'm really happy so many of you showed up. It's so great. Look at this.
Angelo.
Yes.
Did you take notes at all, or did you do any writing at all when you were over there?
I wrote letters. I wrote to my cousin Diane, and I wrote to my mother. I never wrote to any men. And, you know, we were getting letters all the time, mostly from women, sisters and girlfriends, and the men hardly ever wrote. My father never wrote, my brothers never wrote. And that was true about a lot of the guys I was with. So some of what I wrote in the letters became the origins for some of the scenes. And then when I was back in the States, I wrote a novel which nobody will ever see, ever, ever, ever. And a lot of the characters in that novel took on a different life for me, and they started to resemble the guys that I knew. And I took some of the characters in that novel, and I wrote a play, a 3-act play, with 6 characters. And I peddled it around, and the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco did a reading in its Plays in Progress, and the Berkeley Stage did a formal reading. And that really encouraged me. So I stayed with those characters, and more characters began to develop around the relationships with those 6 characters, and they started becoming, having roles in short stories. And I was playing with short stories, and these short stories are in some kind of order, but I didn't write them in the order that they're there. I just kept writing and creating stories and mixing characters and mixing scenes. And And then I left it alone for a while, and I came back to it and played with it a little more. And then I joined a writers group in Grass Valley, and I read the whole collection. And their feedback and encouragement was incredible. And they said, just keep going, get all those stories together. And for those of you who know Bob Ambien, he and I were exchanging writing fiction in his poetry, and he said, I want to publish this. And I said, okay. But back to your question, when did I start writing about it? I actually started seriously writing when I was in Peace Corps. Got out of the Army, got my degree, got my teacher's credential, and went into the Peace Corps. And I started writing scenes on the back of my lesson plans. And the Mother Superior said to me, oh, you should do something with this stuff. And so, I took it seriously, and I developed stories.
Is there any emotional thing that happens to you when you go back and think about these experiences?
Yeah, mostly around guys I knew who didn't make it back. That's always been, the tough part for me. I never felt, honest and truly, I don't know why, I never felt that I was in danger. I just said to myself, I'm going home in one piece. And, and I was an emotional wreck when I came home. I was just not fit company for anybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I had a foul mouth. I had disdain for, how people were condescending to me. Oh, don't talk to him like that. Be careful what you say. He'll say, pass the fucking butter, or something like that. And for a while there, I just stayed away from it. I didn't talk to people about anything, and I didn't really meet any guys who were there. That was the interesting thing. The whole time I was in school, I got involved in the peace movement, and then I was one of the founders of Gay Lib at UCLA. And people asked me a lot of questions because I was this older guy, who didn't look like he belonged in that place. But I really didn't tell them anything that I didn't want them to know.
Did you stay in touch with any of the people that you met?
Yeah, there are a couple of guys I'm in touch with. Some of them have died of natural causes. Most of the guys I was with were about 2 or 3 years younger than me. Yeah.
Are you any or some of the characters in the short stories?
Not really. I mean, Morgan is a gay character, and I really came out in Vietnam. And I don't know what gave me the balls to do that. I mean, I didn't come out and say, hey, this is the story, but I was involved with this guy, and everybody knew. Everybody knew. When he came over to our tracks, they'd say, here comes your boyfriend, that kind of thing. And there was this little bit of sarcasm, but none of my crew gave me any grief. I mean, we were there for each other. We depended on each other. So there was no animosity. So maybe I'm a little bit of Morgan in terms of the gay thing. Maybe I'm a little bit of the character Joey, who's in the second story, who gets blown to smithereens, which I didn't get blown to. Yeah, I mean, the characters are really compendium of a whole bunch of guys I knew. Doug?
Were you in that tunnel?
I was. We went to that base camp. We ran into that base camp, and what happened in the beginning of the story about the firefight and the mines is all true. And we were in this desolated environment, and there was a tunnel, and nobody asked me to go into it. I just, out of curiosity, thought, I got to go down there. And so I went in and crawled around a little bit, and I thought, I ain't sticking around here. I'm getting the hell out of here. But it gave me the inspiration for the story. And one of the things that inspired the story was that metaphor of the light at the end of the tunnel. But the other was that I wanted to really explore what kind of humanity do we have in the way that we face another dying person who is presumably our enemy. And what would you really do in that situation? And I thought about it, and I thought about it, and of course the whole time I was thinking, some tunnel rat guy's going to come up to me and say, "You've never been in a fucking tunnel," you know, that kind of thing. But I really wanted to explore that idea of confronting that Vietnamese kid, because I saw a lot of them. I saw a lot of them alive. I saw more of them dead, and they were just teenagers, and that's who that kid was. To me, that was like, oh, what are you going to do under that circumstance? Are you going to be a shithead, or are you going to do something with dignity? So.
I'm curious that these are very dialogue rich, and I'm just. Can you say a little bit about the process of creating that dialogue? Obviously, you know, you're writing this much later, and I wonder, for instance, maybe when you were doing some work on plays,
The play,
scripts,
yeah,
if that
yeah.
helped.
Yeah, well, of course, the play was all dialogue.
Of course.
And the director of ACT, American Conservatory Theater, said, you know, we're not going to do anything with this because I don't think it's established new ground. He said, but your dialogue is incredible. And I just liked writing dialogue. And one of the stories in the book called Poker Night is almost all dialogue. It's about 12 or 13 pages of overlapping dialogue and chat. But all the stories have dialogue. And it's just one of the things I really like to write.
That's great.
Thanks. Doug?
Are the characters in the play people in the...
Yeah, in a certain way. In a certain way. There were 6 characters in the play, and they all have, well, the Morgan character is in the play. The Ernie character is not. A guy named Wilson, who has a part in a couple of stories, is in that play. Cliff, the African American, the only African American in our unit, my squadron, was in that. And a guy named Tolly, who was sort of our scaredy cat guy, who would do just about anything he could to get out of a field trip. You know, he'd fall in a hole and fracture his ankle, or he'd get bit by a snake, or he'd get bit by a spider, and, you know, say, oh, Tolly's not going out with us this time. He's in the rehab or something like that. So he has a pretty good role in some of the stories. A lot of the characters are recurring, some more than others. Yeah.
Have you had a chance to talk to any recent vets about whether their experiences in Mosul or Fallujah or Kabul resonate?
No, you know, I have reached out to do that, and I just never got any response. You know, I said I want to talk to vets who have been in our current wars and get some feeling about that. I'd like to set up a group so we could talk. And it just, no response, really. And it's a little disappointing because they experienced the same thing I did, you know. And they have to be wondering, you know, what are we doing here? Why are we here?
Do you think that's partly because it takes a while? You have to be back for a while before you can talk about it?
Maybe so, but it's been you know, it's like Iraq was 2003, right?
Yeah.
And Afghanistan barely over. So maybe. I don't run into guys who have been there. Think of any time I really did talk to somebody. When I was in college, there was a guy who lived close to me who had been in the Air Force. And we chatted, and he said, "Oh, your experience is nothing. You know, I didn't do any of that crap that you did. I was in Saigon, and, you know, I was just living the good life." And so we didn't kind of relate in any way about being in the bush, and that sort of thing.
Did you? That's just what I was going to ask. How different might it be now if you were to write, having just come home from Afghanistan or what have you? You said that there's a lot of similarities, but I suspect there'd be some real differences because they're wanting to go, the volunteers.
Right. Well, it's like Bob said in one of the parts of the book, it was our last civilian war, And yeah, I mean, there were guys I was with who enlisted, and we all thought, "What? You enlisted? Are you crazy?" You know.
Yeah, they did.
But yeah, all, Afghanistan, Iraq, they're all, you know.
Angela, do you know that book? There's a book that won a literary prize. I think it was the I don't know if it was a Pulitzer of short stories.
You mean the things they carry, Tim O'Brien?
No, this is more a guy that was like an information officer or something like that in Iraq.
Hmm.
He did 2 or 3 tours, and he came back. It's a very good book of stories.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you'd probably like to read it. There's clearly, you know, he had a different kind of role. He wasn't in combat, you know, like what you write about. But it's the stories are filled with, they're just dripping with irony.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually like Catch-22. It's like a retread of Catch-22, but in the war on terror, because he has some of the stories he really made. There's one that's about baseball. Like somebody in Congress sends all this money so that Iraqi kids can play
baseball.
And so they sponsor. So this story is all about how they get all this equipment and they sponsor and they teach these
Well, if you
kids to play
remember that
baseball.
title, let me know. I'd like to read it. Yeah.
I'll look it up for you. Yeah, it's on the list because I got hold of it because I think I heard a interview with the guy on public radio or something. But it's very striking actually what his attitude may not have pleased his former superiors or people in the military
Yeah.
because it's a little like it is a lot like Catch-22.
Uh-huh.
But you know, I could say something about the from teaching. I just retired from teaching part-time in community college for 25 years, and I had, you know, from time to time I had veterans. I had Afghanistan and Iraq veterans in my classes, and what I got from them is I remember one guy in particular. He was older than all these other kids in a community college class, and he said, we read something out of an anthology that was about it was from some military situation. I can't remember what piece it was, but he said he shared in class. What I found was that these guys, the general attitude was that they don't talk to civilians about the experience. It's too shocking. It's too personal and it's too painful.
And a lot of people don't want to hear it.
Yeah, and
You know, I have a friend.
Yeah, this guy spoke
Yeah.
up. I just remember this one class where he spoke up. He was commenting on something that we read, and he kind of looked around at all these kids in the class, and he said, "You have no idea." He says, "Oh, none of you have any idea what the sound is like in battle. What it sounds like, what it smells like, how foul, you know, how horrible the stench is. What happens when
Yeah.
you're subjected to in these violence and so on." And it was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could see why they don't talk to people.
Yeah, I have some friends who said, you know, I'm never going to read your book because I can't read that kind of stuff. You know, I'm
well,
just not able to do that.
That's too bad because see, one of the things that I like about your stories, I think it's a very elegant. You know, it's a very careful and very elegant presentation of all of this.
Yeah, I feel like there's an anti-war sentiment beneath all of it,
Yeah.
but I didn't feel like I wanted to beat the hell out of anybody.
Well, no, it's very balanced actually.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, in fact, that story called R&R, which takes place. It's
In Hong Kong.
one of your characters goes to Hong Kong, right? Is that based on something that happened either to you or anyone else?
No, I knew that happened. I knew that guys came back and said they were offered an out,
Yeah.
and I was in Hong Kong for R&R.
Yeah.
And with a very different experience from the Wilson character. But it was based on hearing the story, guys coming back saying, "Hey, you know,
I haven't read.
if you guys got some money, I can get you out of the country."
Yeah, I haven't read a lot about.
Yeah.
Actually, I haven't read a lot of the writing about the Vietnam War, but I hadn't heard about. I hadn't come across a anecdote like that that was happening.
I have a couple of friends who have 2 kids, and you know, he said, "Well, I'm going to get the book I'm going to give them to my kids because they don't know jack shit about that war." And you know, and it's like, how many years now? 50 years, right? And it's in the history dirt bag you know, woke culture, right? Yeah, I mean, you know, when I felt like about a couple of months after I was there, even before I got shifted over to the 11th Cav, I saw some things happening, and I thought, not that I'm this saintly kind of person, but I thought, gee, what happened to you? You know, why are you like that to these people? They're, you know, and then there was always the dilemma. You didn't know whether or not they were going to be on your side or the other side. And at night, they were supporting their brothers and husbands and uncles and so forth. And then during the day, they were on the side of the Americans because we were feeding their economy. And you know, those poor people were just got done kicking the French out, and then in we come into their civil war and make a freaking mess out of everything. And it was really depressing to me. And sometimes I would talk to one of my buddies, and I'd get, "You're thinking too fucking much, man. Don't think, you know. You're not going to make it back alive if you think that way."
Another thing that happened though, I mean, I was very involved with the anti-war stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, my father was a career serviceman, and I grew up outside of Fort Dix. And I did a lot of work at Fort Dix, you know, with organizing demonstrations and that sort of thing. And I had a problem oftentimes with, there was, you know, the people who wanted to get to Canada and get out of the service and get to Canada, you know, they were all right. But the total disrespect is the wrong word, but looking down on the people who stayed in the army, you know, and belittling them, and not necessarily to their faces, but behind their backs and stuff. You know, those scumbuckets who are fighting the war and that sort of thing, really troubled me because, you know, a lot of the people who were the anti-war people were college privileged people, and they were from a different class than the people who were actually at Fort Dix who had to be there, and there was little understanding of that, and so you had that kind of, you know, opposition with people, which was really sometimes very, very troubling.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and you know, I didn't experience what some people say was, you know, the animosity from civilians when I came back. I mean, you know, I had a very welcoming homecoming, and my family was really good, but they stayed kind of their distance. And when I joined the anti-war movement, I eventually joined the contingents of the gay vets. And you know, the irony is, you think, wow, we should have been talking our brains out about what happened to us. All we talked about was the anti-war movement. You know, we didn't talk about our experiences, and it was kind of funny. And I would come away from those demonstrations and think, wow, I never found anything out about that guy. You know, I wasn't even sure where he was. But we were, you know, marching our own contingent, and you know, most of those marches were here in San Francisco. It's like they were all happening here. But yeah, that was, you know, you would think, wow, this is a place where people are going to really congregate and talk about things. And we did. And sometimes what happened is people in the anti-war movement would say things and say, no, that's not right. You got that wrong. And don't be yelling that crap out there because you're giving the wrong impression. And most of the time people said, oh, okay. But, you know, I felt a little torn in the movement between what people were saying, what I felt, and, you know, what had happened to me. And, you know, I had to reconcile that. But it was very complicated. Yeah, I was very conflicted. Yeah, the story about Wilson again, who met a woman at UCLA. It's called The Three of Us, or something like, I think, The Three Survivors. It follows him getting involved in the anti-war movement and going to a peace march and showing the conflict he felt being involved in that. Yeah.
I think there was a lot of the were used and.
Right,
And
right.
they wouldn't wanna talk because it was traumatizing, but when you really got to be with them after a while, they did share their experience.
Well, and
It was very hard.
you did that. That's your profession, right?
Still,
Right.
but it was being told that we were against the military, and that was so heartbreaking, almost just like why we couldn't carry flags. It was
Yeah, I think
corrupting
that sentiment was more a sentiment happening here than rather there. I mean, when we were in Vietnam, we didn't talk like we were going to desert or anything like that, or this war is really bad. But we were listening to all the anti-war music. I mean, it was blasting over Armed Forces radio all the time. You know, we'd get back into base camp and smoke dope and listen to the music and dance with each other. You know, we were very much aware of what was happening back here. And I was there early, 66, 67. By the time I got back, the anti-war movement was like exploding. Yeah. Yeah.
As you mentioned, I'm sure you've experienced it yourself, sometimes conversations between veterans and people who have had no exposure to the military or wars can be difficult or awkward or sometimes almost impossible. From your point of view, what would you recommend? What's a really good question one can ask any veteran of any war that would open up a good conversation? Do you have any suggestions?
I guess you'd want to ask them. I mean, you'd have to be sitting down in the right kind of environment and probably have a friendly kind of thing going on with them. And, you know, just ask, like, can you tell me anything about your experience? Can you open my eyes about what happened that I don't know anything about? And you're kind of giving permission that, okay, that person experienced something I didn't, and I'm curious to know, how you felt. But nobody ever asked me that. Sometimes, recently, one of our neighbors hooked me up with one of her students, and she said, Mia wants to ask you some questions. And we spent probably 45 minutes, and she asked me a lot of questions. She never asked me direct questions. She never said, did you kill anybody? Because I thought for sure, this kid's going to ask me, did you kill anybody? Because that's one of the first things somebody really thinks about. And she didn't. She just kind of wended her way around. Her questions were good. They were thought-provoking. But I gathered when it was all over, and I said to my neighbor Katie, I said, I don't think she wanted to know some stuff. And we were in a perfect environment for that. We were alone in a classroom. She was taking notes. She was doing a thing for her class. Yeah, and it was very interesting. Yeah.
Thank you.
When you received your draft notice, did it ever occur to you to do something to avoid being drafted?
I did. I thought about it. I still wasn't convinced. I was bought into that whole idea about communism and how bad it was. And I still had the remnants from Catholic school about the commies killed priests and nuns and da 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 da. So some of that stuff was here. And at the time when I was drafted, there was just a smidget of the anti-war movement raising its head. And I wasn't that aware of it. And I thought, well, if I don't go, what does that mean about me? And how am I going to explain myself out of this? And then I thought, I really love to travel, and I'm going to go to a foreign land, right? And I did. But there were a couple of guys in my advanced training who didn't show up to fly off to Saigon when we all converged on some Air Force base in near Seattle. And I thought, oh, where did those two guys go? And it turned out they went to Canada. Yeah.
Pretty close if they're in Seattle.
Yeah. Are we ready to drink some wine and eat some food?
Thank you very much.
Hey, everybody, thanks for coming. Really lovely.
Yeah.
You want to get your food?